The sun hammered down on San Rafael like God's own judgment. Luke Avery stood at the edge of the crowd, 30 years old and still living in his father's shadow, watching something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Three Apache women stood on a wooden platform in the town square, their wrists bound with rope that had left raw circles on their skin. The youngest couldn't have been more than 16. The oldest looked at the crowd with eyes that had already gone somewhere else, somewhere the jeering couldn't reach. But it was the woman in the middle who made Luke's breath catch. She stood differently than the others. Chin raised, shoulders back despite the chains. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, and even beneath the torn cotton dress, she radiated strength rather than submission. When the crowd hooted and whistled, she didn't flinch. She stared back at them with something Luke had only seen in cornered animals that had decided they'd rather die fighting than live broken. "Let's start the bidding at $3, the auctioneer called out. Luke felt bile rise in his throat. Around him, ranchers and soldiers pressed closer, money already in hand. To his left, Sheriff Hale leaned against a post, grinning like this was the finest entertainment San Rafael had seen all month. The youngest sold for $4. The oldest went for $3.50 to a saloon owner. Then the auctioneer grabbed the middle woman by her jaw, turning her face to the crowd like she was livestock. "Now this one's got fire in her still. Could warm a man's bed and his supper." The crowd erupted. Someone threw a copper coin at the platform. $5, called out a rancher Luke recognized from Sunday services. $6, countered a cavalry sergeant with whiskey on his breath. Luke's hands tightened into fists. His father had sent him to town to collect donations for the church's building fund. The money sat heavy in his pocket, coins and bills meant for God's work. $8, the rancher shouted, laughing. The woman's eyes swept the crowd, and for one impossible moment, they locked with Luke's. There was no plea in them, no hope, just a terrible, burning recognition that he was watching and doing nothing. "9, someone else yelled. The auctioneer raised his hand. $9, going once, going twice. $10. The words left his mouth before his brain caught up. The crowd went silent, heads turning. Luke stepped forward, his hand moving to his pocket. Sheriff Hale's grin widened. "Well now, the preacher's boy wants himself an Apache woman." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Luke's face burned, but he kept walking until he reached the platform. His hands shook as he counted out the church's money, every dollar his father had trusted him to collect. The auctioneer took the money and shoved the woman toward Luke. "Sold. Enjoy your purchase, boy." Luke caught her arm to steady her. She jerked away from his touch, but there was nowhere for her to go. He shrugged off his coat and held it out. "Here." She stared at it like it might be poisoned. "Please," he said quietly. She took it because the sun had burned her shoulders raw. Luke leaned closer, trying to find words that would signal this wasn't what it looked like. "You're perfect for my embrace." The crowd roared with laughter. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Contempt, maybe, or confirmation of what she already knew about men who bought women in dusty border towns. He grabbed the rope that bound her wrists and pulled her away from the platform, through the crowd that parted with whistles and crude suggestions. When they reached the edge of town, he stopped and fumbled with the knots at her wrists. "I'm not," he started, then stopped. "I didn't mean to. I mean, I did, but not like that." She rubbed her wrists, watching him with flat eyes. "You paid for me. You own me." "No." Luke shook his head. "I just needed to get you away from them. That rancher, he's not a good man. And you are." The question hung between them. Luke opened his mouth, closed it again. "I'll let you go," he said finally. "Tonight. After dark. You can head for the hills, find your people." She laughed, a short bitter sound. "My people are dead. Your soldiers made sure of that." She tilted her head. "But you knew that already, didn't you?" Luke's throat closed up. He had known. Everyone knew about the raids, the burnings, the long marches. His father had blessed the cavalry troops before they rode out. "Come on," he said, unable to meet her eyes. "My father's parsonage is a mile north. You can rest there until tonight." She didn't move. "Your father, the preacher, will he let me in his holy house?" Luke hesitated a second too long. She smiled without humor. "That's what I thought." But she followed him anyway. The parsonage sat on a small rise overlooking the town. Luke led her around back to the barn where his father kept 2 horses and a milk cow. He found a blanket and water. "Stay here," he said. "I'll bring food after I talk to him." "Good luck." Luke found Reverend Avery in his study, bent over a heavy Bible. He looked up when Luke entered. "You're late. Did you collect the donations? There was an auction in town." "Ah, yes. I heard they'd captured some raiders. I bought one." The scratching of his father's pen stopped. Slowly, Reverend Avery set it down and removed his spectacles. "Excuse me." "One of the women. I bought her. With the church money." The silence stretched. Then his father stood, moving with the careful control of a man trying not to explode. "You did what?" "She was going to be sold to Thomas Garrett. You know what he does to his servants. So you bought her." His father's voice was flat, dangerous. "You took money meant for God's house, and you bought yourself a heathen woman. To save her. Do you have any idea what you've done? What the congregation will say?" "I don't care what they say." His father moved faster than Luke expected. The slap cracked across his face hard enough to snap his head sideways. Luke tasted copper. "You don't care that you've shamed this family. Shamed the church." Luke touched his throbbing cheek and met his father's eyes. "Like what? Like I was doing Christian charity? Isn't that what you always preach? Don't you dare twist scripture." "Where is she?" "Safe." "Where is she, Luke?" When Luke said nothing, his father strode toward the barn. Luke followed, his heart hammering. They found her sitting on a hay bale, still wrapped in Luke's coat. Reverend Avery went very still. "Get out." She didn't move. "Get out of my property." "No." Luke stepped between them. "She stays. She's not a person, boy. She's property you can't afford and trouble you don't need. Give me the papers, and I'll take her back." "There are no papers. And she's not going anywhere." His father grabbed Luke by his shirt collar. "You will return that woman. You will apologize to the congregation. Or you can pack your things and never set foot in this house again." Luke looked past his father to where the woman sat watching. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her eyes had shifted. He took a breath. "Then I'll pack." His father's grip loosened. "What?" "I said I'll pack my things." "Luke, son, don't be stupid about this." But Luke was already pulling away, heading for the house. They rode out before dawn. The land stretched flat and empty for miles, broken only by jagged rocks and stubborn scrub brush. They didn't speak for hours. By afternoon, they reached an abandoned mine shaft carved into a hillside. Luke gathered brush for a fire while she sat in the shade, watching. "I don't know your name," Luke said finally. She considered whether to answer. "Nina." "I'm Luke." "I know. I heard your father screaming it." He flinched. That didn't go how I planned." "You had a plan?" She raised an eyebrow. "Could have fooled me." The silence stretched. Luke poked at the fire. "Why did you let me take you? You could have fought." "Could have what? Died there? Maybe that would have been better." "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true." She pulled his coat tighter. "You want to know something? When you stepped up with your money, I thought, here's another one. Another white man who thinks he can save me. But you know what the difference is between you and that rancher?" Luke waited, dreading the answer. "Nothing. You just tell yourself prettier lies." The words hit like a physical blow. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what? Buying me? Saving me?" She spat the last word like poison. "You didn't do it for me. You did it to feel holy. To prove something to yourself. I was just the tool you used." Luke's face burned. "That's not true." "Yes, it is. You saw a chance to be the hero. But you paid money for me just like they would have. The only difference is you going to let me go tonight, and then spend the rest of your life telling yourself you one of the good ones." She stood and walked away from the fire. Luke sat frozen, her words echoing in his skull. Was she right? Had he done this for himself? Underneath all the righteousness, hadn't there been a thrill? "Look at me," standing up when others sat silent. The realization made him sick. As darkness fell, Nina spoke again. Her voice was softer now, tired. "My family was camped 3 days north of San Rafael. The soldiers came at dawn, burned everything, shot my father while he was trying to talk. My mother, my little brother. All of them." Her voice caught. "They took the young women." "Nina, your father blessed those soldiers before they rode out. I heard one of them talking about it." Luke's stomach turned to ice. "I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did?" He wanted to say yes. But the honest answer was he didn't know. "Probably not," he admitted quietly. She nodded like this was what she'd expected. Luke woke to find her standing over him with a sharp rock in her hand, pressed against his throat. "You don't get to save me twice," she whispered. "I know," he said. They stayed frozen in that moment. Then Nina made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh, and threw the rock aside. She sat by the fire and put her face in her hands. Neither of them slept the rest of the night. Dawn broke gray and cold. Luke saw them, riders on the ridge to the south. 4 of them, maybe 5. The sheriff? Nina asked. Probably. They squeezed through a gap into a narrow chimney in the rock and climbed up to a ledge 15 feet above ground level. They pressed flat against the rock face as a young deputy appeared below, searching. The deputy's horse snorted and shied. He looked up, his eyes passing right over them. The shadows were deep enough that they were invisible. They waited until the sounds faded before sliding back down and finding a crack in the far wall. It opened into another canyon running east toward higher ground. Only then did Luke realize Nina had been hit. Blood soaked through her dress on the right side. She swayed in the saddle, and Luke caught her before she could fall. When? He demanded. Ricochet. During the gunshot. Her voice was faint. He laid her in the shade of a boulder. The bullet had grazed her ribs, a long, angry furrow that bled freely. Luke tore strips from his shirt and pressed them against the wound. How bad? She asked. Not. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. By morning, infection was setting in. Without medicine, without proper care, she was dying by inches. Luke made his decision. He saddled the horse before dawn. Nina was watching him. Running out on me? Going to get help. San Rafael has a doctor. They'll arrest you the second you show your face. Probably. But if I don't go, you die for sure. Her hand caught his wrist. They'll hang you. Maybe. But I can't just sit here and watch you die. He met her eyes. You were right. About everything. I did buy you to feel holy. But that doesn't mean I can't try to do better now. You really are a fool, preacher's boy. Yeah, I know. Luke rode straight into San Rafael at noon. He tied his horse outside the doctor's office and walked inside. Luke Avery, the doctor said, surprised. I heard you'd run off. I need your help. There's a woman. She's been shot. She's dying. Son, I can't. If the sheriff, he already knows I'm here. But before he gets here, I need you to tell me what supplies to take. How to treat a gunshot wound. The doctor stared at him, then began pulling items from his cabinets. Clean the wound with whiskey, he said quietly, packing everything into a satchel. Change the bandages twice a day. And if the wound starts to smell sweet, like rotting fruit, then there's nothing more to be done. The door burst open. Sheriff Hale stood framed in the entrance, 3 deputies behind him. Lucas Avery, you're under arrest for theft and murder. Luke blinked. Murder? Found Johnson's body yesterday. Bullet in his back. Where's the savage? She's hurt. Dying. I just came for medicine. Hale grabbed Luke by his collar. You're going to tell me where she is. And then you're going to watch while I put her down. Something in Luke snapped. He drove his elbow back into Hale's stomach, grabbed the man's gun, and aimed it at his face. The deputies drew their weapons. Nobody move, Luke said. Doctor, that satchel. Toss it here. The doctor slid the bag across the floor. Luke scooped it up, gun still trained on Hale. You're making this so much worse, Hale wheezed. Maybe, but at least I'll deserve it. Luke backed toward the door. Tell my father I'm sorry I wasn't a better liar. He bolted, sprinting for his horse while gunfire erupted behind him. He threw himself into the saddle and spurred the horse into a gallop. He made it to the canyon by twilight. Nina was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Luke cleaned the wound, applied salve, wrapped fresh bandages. He forced water and laudanum between her lips. As darkness fell, he heard them coming. Hoofbeats echoing off stone, growing closer. Luke checked the gun. 6 bullets. He positioned himself between Nina and the approaching riders and waited. They came at dawn. Sheriff Hale rode at the front, his face twisted with hatred. It's over, boy. Throw down the gun. Come and take it, Luke said. Hale raised his rifle. The first shot came from Luke's left. Hale jerked and fell from his saddle. The deputy spun, confused. Another shot rang out, and a second deputy went down. Luke turned and saw Nina propped against a boulder, rifle smoking in her hands. Her face was gray with pain, but her aim was steady. Chaos erupted. The remaining deputies scattered. Luke returned fire. One deputy broke and ran. Hale tried to follow. Nina shot him again. He fell hard and didn't get up. The sudden silence was deafening. Luke walked to where Nina sat. She'd collapsed back against the rock, the rifle fallen from her hands. You're supposed to be dying, Luke said. I am. She coughed and blood flecked her lips. Just wanted to take some of them with me. Luke knelt beside her, taking her hand. It was cold. We need to move. No. Her grip tightened weakly. No more running. Nina, please. Listen to me. She pulled him closer. You think dying for me will make you pure? Luke thought about everything that had led them to this moment. No, he said honestly. But maybe it'll make you free. Nina's hand pressed his palm against her chest, over her heart. The beat was faint and irregular. Then live, she whispered. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what they did. Nina, promise me. I promise. Her eyes held his for one more moment, fierce and unbroken. Then the light in them dimmed and went out. Luke carried her to a spot near the dry riverbed where scraggly cottonwoods offered shade. He dug with his bare hands until he had something resembling a grave. He wrapped her in his coat and lowered her gently into the earth. Before covering her, he removed his cross necklace and placed it in her folded hands. I don't know if there's a heaven, he said. But if there is, I hope they let you in. And I hope they keep men like me the hell away from you. He filled the grave and marked it with stones. Luke rode into San Rafael 3 days later. He was filthy, exhausted, and openly armed. People scattered as he passed. He rode straight to his father's church where Sunday service was in full swing. The doors were open. Through them, Luke could hear his father's voice preaching about grace and redemption. Luke dismounted and walked inside. The congregation fell silent. Every head turned. In the pulpit, Reverend Avery's voice faltered and stopped. Luke walked down the center aisle. When he reached the front, he pulled Sheriff Hale's badge from his pocket and placed it on the altar. Your blessed soldiers murdered her family, Luke said. His voice carried clearly. They burned their camp, shot her father while he was trying to talk. Then they marched the survivors to town and sold them like cattle. Nina was 24 years old. She was brave and strong and angry, and she had every right to be. Someone in the congregation started to speak. Luke cut them off. Sheriff Hale tracked us down with 4 deputies. They wanted to kill her and make me watch. She saved my life. She killed 3 of them, including the sheriff, and she died doing it. He turned to face the congregation, meeting their eyes. If you call this God's work, then you've never seen God. You've seen power. You've seen cruelty. You've seen men doing evil and calling it holy. Reverend Avery found his voice. Son, you're not yourself. What you've been through, her name was Nina. You need help. You need guidance. I'm done praying with you. Luke looked at his father and felt nothing but pity. I'm done pretending that what happens in this building has anything to do with faith or mercy. You blessed those soldiers. You sanctioned that auction. You chose power over people every single time. He walked back up the aisle. At the door, Luke paused. She asked me why I did it. Why I bought her at that auction. I told her I wanted to save her. But the truth is she saved me. She showed me what you all really are. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that gift. He walked out into the sunlight, mounted his horse, and rode away from San Rafael for the last time. Behind him, the church remained silent. Luke rode north toward the territories, toward towns where no one knew his name. In his saddlebag, he carried paper and ink. He would write down everything that happened. Nina's story, the auction, the chase, all of it. He would tell it to anyone who would listen. Maybe it wouldn't change anything. Probably it wouldn't. But he would tell the story anyway. For Nina. For the promise he'd made. For the truth. The desert stretched endlessly before him, empty and hostile and beautiful. Luke touched the spot where his cross used to hang and felt its absence like a wound. But maybe that was fitting. Maybe he needed to hurt for a while. He thought about Nina's words at the campfire, about how he'd bought her to feel holy. She'd been right, but she'd also given him a chance to become something better. Not good, maybe never good, but honest. Awake, alive to the weight of his choices. You're perfect for my embrace, he'd said at the auction, trying to sound bold and failing completely. Now, riding into the unknown with her death weighing heavy on his soul, Luke finally understood what those words should have meant. Not possession, not salvation, but witness. To see someone clearly, to acknowledge their humanity in a world that denied it. To stand beside them even when it cost everything. To remember them truly after they were gone. That was the embrace Nina deserved. That was the only thing Luke could still give her. He rode on as the sun climbed higher, its light harsh and unforgiving, revealing everything, just the way she would have wanted it.